and welcome to today's wellness discussion. Today, I'm going to be discussing with Jackie and Sam, who I'll introduce shortly, the topic of alcohol in the context of our well-being, our physical and our mental well-being. The reason we chose this topic is it is one that features so often on, I think, pretty much everybody's health and well-being journey. That decision of, should I be consuming alcohol? And if I so choose to consume alcohol, to what degree, in moderation or not? What types of alcohol? And is there anything that I can do to support my body given this decision to consume alcohol? And that is just a little bit of an insight into what we're going to be discussing in today's video. But we figured this is a very important topic to cover because it's so relevant for so many people, especially most of us live in cultures where the consumption of alcohol is a very regular thing. To cover this topic, I am joined here today by my co-creators. We created a course, Coming Home to Yourself, the three of us, that is geared towards women's well-being, for women to block out the noise in society around health and well-being and come home to yourself, guided by a lot of wisdom, but not a lot of strict rules or us telling women what they should or shouldn't be doing with their bodies. And we're so proud of this course that we developed together. So it's probably going to come up a lot in these videos, just because these videos, and the reason why we're making them, is actually because there was such a overflow of information that we wanted to share. And we had to cap our course at some point and say, you know, we got to get this thing out. We just wanted to put in more and more and more. So we decided, let's make these kind of discussions where we get to talk about these topics and we get to share this information with people so they have access to it and they can join us in the discussion. So please join us in the discussion, and always feel free to comment your personal take on things in the comments down below. First, I want to introduce Jackie, who is a huge part of our course in terms of her massive knowledge of all things health, but particularly nutrition.
Hi, everyone. I am Jackie and I am a nutritional therapist. I work with women, particularly women struggling with hormonal health issues, to use food and nourishment as a way to support their body and their optimal hormone balance. I come from a background of biostatistics, so I have a research background and I am obsessed with researching all things health, wellness, hormones, nutrition, gut health. I have that research background that really drives my curiosity, and I like to summarize all that information into an easy to understand way that women can really support their bodies.
I'm so grateful that I got to create this course with Jackie. As some of you might know, Jackie and I have been doing wellness discussions for a period of time. We took a break to do the parenting thing and to work on our course, but we're back now. And we have an additional member to our wellness discussions, and we brought Sam in because although Jackie and I have so much that we'd like to discuss, just the two of us, there felt like there was this missing piece, and Sam was this perfect missing piece that we had been looking for. So Sam, please share with us a little bit about yourself, and that will make it so clear to everybody why we were like, Sam, join us.
Thank you so much for that introduction. My name is Sam. I'm a holistic life coach. I work with women around the world on a wide range of topics. My passion is bringing women back into union with themselves, into relationship with themselves. So many women are disconnected, not only from their body, but from their emotions and from their true self and their true essence. And my greatest passion is seeing the light arrive back in women's faces when they finally connect back to themselves. And I love to journey through self-loving techniques, mindfulness modalities, with a little bit of spirituality kind of brought into that. I believe everybody is unique. And I love diving into the stories of women that I work with and hopefully sharing some of the wisdom from those stories in the course and in the discussions that we have today.
And there you have it. The three of us are going to cover this topic. What we're going to cover in today's video, we're going to start with the discussion of the impact of alcohol. This is not to scare anybody, but this is so that we have a realistic understanding of what happens in our body when we choose to consume alcohol. And we'll answer the big question of, Is it worth consuming alcohol on your health and well-being journey? From that, we'll move to if somebody chooses to consume alcohol, how can they mitigate the effect on their physical and their mental health? We'll discuss alternatives and a variety of tips that we draw from other people's experiences, but also our own, given that the three of us have had very long health and well-being journeys ourselves. And now, just before we dive into that, I just want to get the formal disclaimer out of the way. These videos and these discussions are for educational purposes, for some insights, for some nice information for reflecting. But obviously, they are not professional advice. These videos are not medical advice or any other kind of professional advice. Please take what serves you and leave what doesn't serve you. Let's get into the heart of today's video, and I'm going to start by asking Jackie to please give us an overview and an understanding of when we choose to consume alcohol, what's happening for us in our body when we do that.
Everyone knows that alcohol is a burden to the liver. The liver is responsible for detoxing and excreting that alcohol from our systems after we consume it. But what a lot of people don't realize is what else the liver is responsible for, and therefore what consuming alcohol comes at a cost of. Our liver is also responsible for detoxing and excreting excess estrogen in our bodies. The liver is responsible for converting the storage form of thyroid hormone into the active form of thyroid hormone. The liver is responsible for storing glucose in the form of glycogen that helps keep our blood sugar stable during times of fasting, such as overnight. When we consume alcohol and our liver is overburdened with detoxing that alcohol, these other important functions and roles that the liver has to perform get put on the back burner. When we regularly consume alcohol, we'll start to get issues in those various areas. For example, if we are regularly consuming alcohol and our liver is not able to detoxify that excess estrogen effectively, we might start struggling with symptoms of estrogen dominance, like irregular cycles, heavy periods, painful periods, PMS. If our liver is not converting thyroid hormone effectively, we might start struggling with symptoms of low thyroid function, such as feeling cold all the time, unexplained weight gain, various symptoms that come along with low thyroid function. If our liver glycogen is not storing as effectively, we'll start to struggle with symptoms of blood sugar imbalance. And we really need to be thinking about what is our primary goal right now. If your hormone health is perfect and you're not struggling with any of those issues, then maybe consuming alcohol from time to time isn't going to have a net negative effect on your body. But if hormone health, optimizing your hormone health is your primary goal right now, if you're struggling with any of those symptoms, then we need to start thinking, is it worth taxing your liver with that additional burden? On top of the liver effects, alcohol also contains some phytoestrogens, which stimulates estrogen receptors in the body. Alcohol also activates the aromatase enzymes in our body. And when those enzymes are activated, a lot of the androgens and testosterone in our body gets converted into estrogen. Like I said, not only are we impairing the liver's ability to detoxify estrogen, the alcohol itself is estrogenic. Another issue that regular alcohol consumption can have is starting to deplete some vital nutrients in the body. So, for example, when we consume alcohol, the vitamin B1 that we would eat in that meal is not absorbed. And vitamin B1 is a very important nutrient for the liver to detoxify estrogen. So that's another way that our body can struggle to maintain hormone balance when we consume alcohol. The liver requires a lot of B vitamins, a lot of amino acids to do its job. And so all those nutrients are getting used up by this function to detoxify alcohol instead of all those other important functions that they should be prioritized for.
From my understanding, which is not as good in terms of the nutrition, what I'm hearing Jackie say is that essentially it's impacting on your liver. But if we're speaking just about the hormones, because that's what we speak about a lot with women's health, it's literally impacting on the main ones. It's impacting on estrogen, pushing it up. It's impacting on progesterone, pushing it down. And if it's not clear, we need those two to have a nice balance. So when people say, I want to balance my hormones, what they mean is you want to balance the ratio of estrogen to progesterone. Now, when we're throwing that off is when we have issues. And also, alcohol impacts on the other hormones. So the one that's typically deemed a male hormone is testosterone, but women need it too. We need it for ovulation. and alcohol impacts on testosterone and our LH levels. So what Jackie covered here, including the nutrient depletion that she spoke of, we might think of those stuff as, oh, those sciencey things on the side. But if we look at it in a bigger picture, if you're experiencing things where you have received a diagnosis around your thyroid or around your hormones, PCOS, endometriosis, fibroids, any of those kind of things, those diagnoses still come back to what's happening in the body, which is what Jackie was covering for us, the technical little things that are doing their dance, and we want them to do that dance in a healthy way. So when we consume things or do things in our lifestyle, we're impacting on that, which is going to impact on how we feel as a whole. So what Jackie discussed is going to have a short-term implication. We all know the feeling of being hungover and how you feel there, but also the long-term implication of a moderate amount long-term can contribute to issues, or that alongside other things happening in your body could lead to what you're struggling with.
Yeah, and just for some context, I have some studies here with the actual figures of the shifts in hormones. Study says that after 1.9 drinks, progesterone levels decreased by 17%, which is quite significant. After 3.3 drinks, estrogen levels increased by 66%. So if we are consuming alcohol regularly, that is going to have a major impact on our hormone balance.
And that increase of 66% that Jackie just said there, if you're in the health realm, you've definitely heard the term estrogen dominance. And we understand that that's something that's really a thing that people are struggling with in our society right now. So this is a huge impact on that. 66% is huge. And that's not a large alcohol consumption.
Yeah, in common, like you mentioned, we can actually see those effects in our menstrual cycle by charting our basal body temperatures. So how have you seen the impact in cycle charting?
Yes. And I know this is not what this is about, but I just got to throw it in here. A lot of time we complain about being a woman, but I just want to say, how cool is it that as a woman, we can literally see this impact, which a male may not be able to see with this metric that you don't have to go to a doctor for. You can do this in the comfort of your home by using a very cheap device, which is a thermometer. The impact that we see with the consumption of alcohol is on our basal body temperature. And our basal body temperature is a reflection of our metabolic health. And I know metabolic health for most people means weight loss and all that. No, it's also your body's ability to keep you healthy and fight disease. So it's very important. And we can see partly our metabolic health through our basal body temperature charting. What we'll experience across the menstrual cycle is that pre-ovulation, we've got a typically low basal body temperature, then we'll ovulate, and only through ovulation, shout out to ovulation, do we produce a significant amount of progesterone, which then pushes up our basal body temperature for the remainder of our cycle until our bleed comes. Now, what happens when we consume alcohol short term? So if you're using your menstrual cycle to avoid pregnancy or to get pregnant, you pay very close attention to the shifts of your basal body temperature. Now, one night of consumption of alcohol can already throw off your chart. So what's going to happen typically when you consume alcohol, when you're busy consuming it, it's likely to, I think, decrease your basal body temperature in that moment. But the next morning, when you wake up, most people see a spike in their basal body temperature. Now, this is not a good spike. This is not a yay, we're feeling so healthy and fresh kind of spike. This is a artificial spike in your basal body temperature that could throw off you reading your temperature chart, which is important because remember, if you're avoiding pregnancy in your luteal phase, which is post-ovulation, you are free to do the deed as you wish to do without the fear of pregnancy. But if you have an artificial jump, some people might think, oh, I ovulated, oh, we finished that fertile window, when in fact you did not. You just consumed alcohol. Now that's on the short term, is you may see a spike, but I strongly recommend, even though loads and loads and loads of women say that is what they see, please do your own chart and see what is it that you see when you consume alcohol, because that's the more important one than comparing it to what other women see when they consume alcohol. Because maybe yours goes down because along with consuming alcohol, you got very little sleep. Very little sleep translates to a lower basal body temperature. So when you've had little sleep and or alcohol, I recommend that you make a note of that and to see over different cycles how those things are impacting on your chart so that you can reliably read your chart. Now, speaking about the long-term effects, and this ties into what Jackie said with the impact of the hormones. When we're taking in something that is a burden to the body and we're doing so over and over and over, even though we're feeling healthy this cycle, we may see the impact of that a little bit later. And how that will typically play out is if we're continuously pushing up that estrogen and pushing down the progesterone, we're having an impact on our metabolic health in general. So what we may see is our entire chart may shift downwards. So our entire basal body temperature chart is going to either shift down or not improve. If you're trying to get it to improve, this is something that's going to keep it down. And this is something that you want to take as a health metric. You want to take this as your body is speaking to you that it's not functioning optimally. In our course, we discuss what do you want to see as a healthy basal body temperature? What does a healthy cycle look like? Not just what does a normal cycle look like? What is common to other people, but really what is a healthy cycle? And alcohol is going to impact that in various ways, not just the basal body temperature, but as Jackie mentioned, also your PMS symptoms. The luteal phase gets so much hate as like the worst 2 weeks because everybody's got their PMS symptoms and you're feeling so depressed and anxious and awful. And then we couple that with consuming alcohol, which literally is pushing those two markers that makes for a good luteal phase is being impacted by the alcohol. So we might also see, because as Jackie discussed, a little bit of alcohol can have a big impact on your cycle. So what can happen for some people, depending on how sensitive your cycle is, you could delay ovulation by a consumption of alcohol. And this is because of the impact on estrogen and testosterone and LH. So this is not something you want to be doing. And we discuss this in detail in our course and probably in other discussions is ovulation is so vital to a woman's health. It's very important. We don't want to be unnecessarily delaying it. So that's something to be mindful of in your chart is watch when you consume alcohol in your follicular phase or in your bleed, are you delaying your ovulation through this alcohol consumption? That's a lot to consider in terms of the physical. So let's move away from the physical for now. And I'm going to hand this over to Sam. Sam, please enlighten us a bit with your wisdom around alcohol and how this relates to our mental well-being.
Beautiful. Thank you, Coms. So most of us who have had a history with alcohol will also have a history potentially with the after effects and the hangovers that you experience. And physically, that's an absolute nightmare, especially for me. I have a very sensitive body, and I think back to some of those mornings that I would wake up and it literally quite feels like your body has been poisoned. And I think in reflection to understanding more about alcohol and the burden that it places on the body, I recognize now that my body had been poisoned in many ways, and my body was communicating that to me. So on a physical level, you just feel awful, and it's not necessarily always reaching towards a hangover, but there is an after effect to drinking. And often it connects to people's why behind why they're drinking. You know, I think the intention towards drinking is often to either mask how we really feel, to numb how we feel, fit in socially, or to just kind of have a plaster on something that might be niggling at us. Now, there's also the celebratory aspect of it that we obviously have to kind of consider. But most people, specifically the people that I work with who have a habit of drinking consistently, they're not doing it just to have a beautiful celebration. They're doing it to ease after a long day. They're drinking a glass of wine to kind of help them have a difficult conversation. They're drinking socially because they don't necessarily feel that they can be their most authentic selves. And so at the end of the day, there's an absolute disconnection that takes place when you're drinking regularly. And it's quite interesting. There's a breakdown of the word alcohol, and it comes down to two words, which is al-ghul. And al-ghul actually means spirit. And what they say in a lot of the spiritual text is that when you drink alcohol, your spirit almost leaves your body, and you welcome in whatever kind of entities might want to take place in that open space. And that might sound a little bit woo-woo, but if you've ever kind of encountered someone who's very drunk, they would never do the things that they do drunk sober. It's almost as if they take on a different personality, a different energy. And so that disconnection is a disconnection from the truest essence of who we are. Now, often that means that we wake up with implications that are much more dire than just a physical hangover. There's regret, there's doubt. I have a client who can't remember some of the stuff that she says, even when she has 3 glasses of wine. And so there's this constant feeling of not being able to trust yourself, not being able to know what you said or what you did. Now, those are all kind of the more extreme cases of drinking regularly and quite compulsively. But if you are even drinking, like say, for instance, myself 5 years ago, not in a way to numb, but socially and enjoyably, maybe 2 or 3 glasses of wine a week. When you are on a journey of self-awareness and expansion and transformation and personal development, that disconnection, you might not be reaping those negative results the next day if you don't have a hangover. But after a long period of time, that disconnection, without sounding too dramatic, can sometimes feel like a betrayal of your soul, because there's a part of you that constantly leaves your body. There's a part of you that constantly needs some kind of substance to interact with the world around you. Now, I'm not encouraging everyone to go completely sober. You need to do what you need to do. But what I can say as someone who has delved in and out of sobriety throughout maybe the past decade is the moments and the months when I'm not drinking, there is a certain clarity, connection, and groundedness that I experience that even if I'm drinking very, very rarely, I cannot even remotely touch that frequency or that energy. And what I will say is, if you are someone who is prioritizing health, well-being, and being your most optimized self, give yourself a point of reflection where you do release alcohol from your life for a certain amount of time, and compare that to when you were drinking alcohol, either frequently or infrequently, and notice what comes up for you. For me, what's really interesting is that when a lot of my clients who don't have drinking problems at all, but drink quite frequently, let's say once a week, when they do stop drinking and take a momentary pause, it's so interesting how much stuff comes up to the surface, whether it's emotions, whether it's stuff that they've been avoiding. They didn't even realize that they were pushing it down, but there's a numbing that happens when you're drinking alcohol on a regular basis. And like I said, the consequences might not be a dire hangover the next day, but in the long term, there is a disassociation and disconnection that absolutely cannot be denied.
Wow, Sam, I felt that. I felt that quite deeply. I was just thinking back to my 21-year-old self, and I just want to go give her a hug.
Yeah.
I just remember how I used to go out to a bar, and I thought I had to get drunk to interact and be sociable and be likable and be, that cool girl who's just so fun and friendly and no troubles. I thought I had to drink. I would often, first have pre-drinks to make sure that when I got somewhere, I was at least a little bit relaxed. And first thing, go up to the bar, order some shots. Just get the night going. And I really thought that I couldn't have fun, I couldn't socialize if I didn't do that. And yeah, when you were talking about how it just removes that sense of self, I really felt that. I'm just thinking back to my younger self, thinking, yeah, she didn't have that strong sense of self. She didn't know who she was. She didn't feel comfortable in her own shoes. And I didn't realize it, but now that you're saying it, looking back, I do think toning down the alcohol, and I mean, now I don't drink at all, but that definitely gave me that opportunity to remove that numbing, even if I didn't see it as numbing at the time, but give me that opportunity to feel more grounded and feel more secure in myself and who I am, and know that I don't have to have some external influence to be likable and to be sociable.
One more thing I want to add is that you mentioned kind of needing to relax in these spaces. What we don't question at 21 years old is, why are we entering spaces that require us to be in a state in order to feel comfortable in those spaces? These dark, dingy clubs that I used to frequent quite often, too much to my horror now. I think back, like, those spaces would bring me so much anxiety if I had to go into those spaces now. There's a reason why that brings me anxiety. Those are not aligned spaces. There's not necessarily the best things that happen in those spaces. I don't need a glass of wine before yoga class. There's a reason being, because the yoga class offers me up a space that feels safe, and I don't need to pretend. I don't need to relax. We need to ask the questions, Why do we need substances in spaces to relax? Maybe those spaces aren't for us in the first place.
I really resonated a lot with what both of you shared there in terms of that's very similar to my own experience. I think I was very lost in my early 20s. I think most people really are lost in their early 20s, and then you go looking for yourself in all the wrong places and you don't really find yourself because you're partaking in this type of substance to try to be somebody or something that you are not. And for me, this had an impact on wider things that I then started to medicate those other things. So I was an insomniac. Now I'm consuming alcohol, which has an impact on your sleep. Now I'm trying to medicate my insomnia. I have the formal ADD diagnosis, or did. You consume alcohol, it has an impact on that. Now you're trying to medicate that. The same with your hormones. Now you're trying to medicate all of these things that you're not realizing that you are, making worse through those lifestyle choices that you have. And I say that all with a lot of compassion for younger me, who obviously did the best that I could at the time, but I'm very grateful that I found a way to get out of that. And I think that leads me to ask the question of, when we are sitting with symptoms and when we're sitting and thinking, I want to live my healthy, best life, I want to feel good, is it worth consuming alcohol? And I think I will just say first, from my personal experience and from my personal choice on my health and well-being journey, anybody who knows me pre-sustainability journey will know that I did the opposite of healthy. I consumed alcohol, I smoked, I was on the pill, I ate takeout for most of my meals. So for me, it was drastic changes. It was really big changes. And only about a year into that journey did I choose to stop consuming alcohol. And you would think it was for the physical reasons, because my hangovers are terrible. So you'd think it was because of that, but it wasn't. It was actually because I had this inkling that, as someone who is highly sensitive to stimulus, and we often think of that in the emotional sense, I'm highly sensitive to stimulus in social settings and in other settings. And I had this inkling that I consumed alcohol as a numbing agent in social settings so that it wouldn't be so stimulating for me. And I was never somebody who wanted to drink at home by myself. So it's not like I particularly liked alcohol when I was by myself. It was in social settings I used this. And I decided to experiment to see, can I do it without? And it was really difficult after a good 10 years of living in a society where every time I went to a social setting, I then opted not to do it. And it took a little bit of breaking that habit, but the impact that I felt was so good on my mental health and my physical health that I had actually just said I was going to do it for 2 months or so. And I ended up sticking with it. I then consumed alcohol in small moderations at various points thereafter, but very rarely, probably once or twice a year, and I haven't consumed alcohol in a good over 3 years now, just because it felt so good not to. So for me, the answer to the question, is it worth it? As I'd say no. And that's just because I experimented with it and I felt how amazing I felt when I didn't consume it, physically and also mentally and emotionally, and my cognitive functioning. So for me, that's a no.
Yeah, I think it really comes down to where you are in your well-being journey and what your goals are. If you are happy with where your health is, if you're feeling good, if you have, regular healthy cycle, so you know that your hormones are in check and you enjoy an occasional drink, I don't think it necessarily will have a net negative effect overall. You always hear of, these populations that live to over 100 and they drink wine regularly, or, everyone tells you about, oh, but my great grandmother lived to over 100 years old and she smoked and drank every day. So I don't think alcohol necessarily is always terrible for you. I don't think there's really any positives. People like to argue about antioxidants and things like that, but I mean, you can get way more antioxidants just by eating some berries. So I don't think that there's a health reason to consume alcohol, but I get that it can be enjoyable. I personally really appreciate the art of winemaking. I live in the winelands and I enjoy going to a wine farm and doing some wine tasting. I think it's quite a fun experience. experience, to taste the different wines and know that there's quite an amazing science to making wine and getting these flavor profiles and things like that. I mean, I won't consume alcohol for probably quite a long time because I'm breastfeeding and still want to have another pregnancy. But maybe one day I would like to go and, do some wine tasting. And I do think there's a place for it and still being overall very healthy. So again, I think it comes down to your goals. My goal right now is breastfeeding my baby and getting pregnant in the next 2 to 3 years. So therefore, I'm not consuming alcohol. That's my hard no. Like I said, I think it comes down to your goals. And then I think it comes down to why are you drinking? And I think that's where Sam can maybe give some insight, is really understanding your why. And I think that can drive whether it's worth it for you or not.
Beautifully said. I think I agree with everything you've both said, and I think the intentionality piece is a big one. The reason behind your drinking is connected to your relationship with yourself. So first and foremost, I encourage you to build a relationship with yourself where you are having an engagement with yourself, where you understand your weaknesses, where you understand your strengths, where you understand your vices. I had a challenging relationship with substances for most of my 20s, and that forced me to engage with powerful and sometimes tricky discussions with myself on why I was drinking or why I was using substances. And that put me in a very beautiful place to really understand now, if I am going to have a glass of wine, because most of the time that's all it might be, what is the driving force behind that? And I think it is quite nuanced. It is individualized depending on where you're at, like Jackie said, in your own personal journey and what you're dealing with at that time. It's really, really easy for us to be going through a difficult time and to have a million different vices, alcohol included, that helps us cope with that time. And society is actually encouraging that most of the time. It's funny because when you choose not to drink, it's the only thing that we choose to abstain from that people assume you have a problem if you're abstaining. That's how normalized alcohol is. If you say, oh, I don't smoke, no one goes and pesters you and asks why and thinks, oh, you have a problem. It's like, oh, of course, you don't smoke. Smoking is bad for you. With alcohol, it's immediately assumed that you have a problem. And I think that that's quite interesting in a telltale sign of where our society is at. So one is having a relationship with yourself, checking in with your reason why. For myself, I am moving towards healing my own thyroid challenges and also moving towards trying to conceive a baby. So minimal alcohol for me will be my choice. And like I said, as someone who's dabbled between sobriety and frequent drinking, there is no doubt that when I'm not drinking, I am my best, most optimized self. And one more piece of this is also just acknowledging, like Carmen said, your degree of sensitivity to things. I'm a highly sensitive person. I'm actually an HSP, highly sensitive person. I'm sensitive to stimulus. I'm sensitive to food. I'm sensitive to alcohol. And so the effects on my body and my mind and my soul, for me, it's not worth it. However, if the circumstance arrives, like we've spoken before, I've chatted to these two ladies, is I've got my wedding in December. There will be a glass of champagne and I will definitely be partaking in that. It's an infrequent thing that I do, but in the moment for that celebration, that's something that I will have. And that's, again, I have such a good relationship with myself now, and I have a good relationship with alcohol, where one glass of champagne, for me, it's about the moment and it's about the celebration. But other than that, on my personal journey, me and alcohol, we're not good friends.
I really want to discuss the decision to have alcohol and then ways that you could mitigate the negative effect on that. But just before that, I want to quickly tell you about one of the free resources that we have created. So linked down below is a body awareness journal. So when I was starting on my health and well-being journey, I did very, very in-depth journaling about my cycle, about my experience of my body, my mental health, and everything that I was doing to see how this impacted on myself. So linked down below was something that I created in conjunction with the other two women with journal prompts that you can use to come home to yourself and to figure out this question for yourself to see how is the consumption of alcohol impacting on you and how does it feel when you don't consume it, through the reflection of a journal. So like I said, that's free and that is linked down below. But now let's discuss, if you so choose to consume alcohol, what can you do to mitigate the effect of that? And I think Jackie has some great wisdom to share on this topic.
Yeah, so I think one of the mistakes that most people make when consuming alcohol is to consume it on an empty stomach. So typically you'll either go out for a meal and you'll order a glass of wine or a beer or something, before eating your meal, or you'll go out for after work drinks and have some alcohol you haven't eaten since lunch. That I think is going to have the biggest negative impact, is having alcohol on an empty stomach. We need to give the body some fuel. Having fuel in our system is what can power the liver to do its job of detoxifying that alcohol effectively, so that it doesn't have such a negative effect on your hormones, your blood sugar balance, your thyroid function. So I would say, if you can, have at least a snack before going out and drinking, or maybe get to a restaurant, order a starter, have a starter, and then have your glass of wine. I think that can make quite a big difference. Then in terms of the type of alcohol, beer and wine are the most estrogenic of the alcohols, and unfortunately those are probably the most common. If you want to have the least negative impact, it is best to go for a clear, pure alcohol, like a clear vodka or a gin. That's going to be the least estrogenic to your body. And then consuming alcohol with fructose has been shown to improve the abilities liver to metabolize that alcohol by 80%. Fructose is fuel for your liver. It's helping to process that alcohol. I would say the best way to consume alcohol would be maybe like a fruity cocktail. So something like some pure vodka or pure gin with some cranberry juice or orange juice or something like that. I would say that's probably your best bet. And then having a really well-balanced meal. So again, that you're fueling your body, you're fueling your liver process. Your liver requires a lot of amino acids and a lot of B vitamins to do its job. So having a decent source of protein, my preference is for animal protein, and that's really going to fuel your liver and enable it to do its job effectively. Like I mentioned, if you're drinking, you are inhibiting the absorption of vitamin B1 in that meal. So unfortunately, you won't be absorbing the vitamin B1. So making sure you get enough B1 in general is very important. And if you are a frequent drinker, I would definitely consider potentially supplementing vitamin B1 and potentially supplementing vitamin B3. It's also been shown to negate the negative impact on your liver. That's maybe some additional considerations. But I think, not drinking on an empty stomach, pure, clear alcohol, and having some fructose with it, those would be the 3 top recommendations.
I find those really valuable. And I just want to add in here that if you are tracking your cycle and you are aware of your menstrual cycle, you can also try to see when in your cycle it has the least impact for you to consume alcohol. For most people, alcohol consumption in your luteal phase is going to have a bigger impact on your health. So therefore, you might then choose to, during that time, especially if you are experiencing unpleasant luteal phase symptoms, to not consume alcohol in that time, or if you do, to really significantly lessen it and then rather have it in a different phase of your cycle.
One of the best ways to, if you are sober curious or if you're wanting to explore a life without alcohol, I think it's really important that specifically socially, you replace it with something else. And we've created such an amazing, Jackie specifically has created an amazing mocktail guide with delicious mocktails. I myself love making mocktails. It feels like a treat. I put it in a beautiful glass. It's celebratory and you feel included into everything, but you obviously don't have the negative side effects. And then another option is kombucha. I absolutely love kombucha for an alternative. It's got the fizziness, it's got a little bit of that buzz. And for me, specifically when I was really kind of struggling with my relationship with alcohol, really replacing the replica. So making it in a beautiful glass or having it in a bottle, you kind of just trick your brain and it stops fighting and resisting the path that you've chosen. And it just makes it a lot easier.
Yes, that is actually exactly what I did. Mocktails and kombucha was my way to go and still is my way to go, to feel like I'm participating, but I'm not participating. And similar to Jackie, I am breastfeeding and also preconception for future pregnancy. So remember, preconception, vital, vital time. It's not just about when you get pregnant, it's preconception for you and your partner. Remember, we said alcohol impacts on testosterone too. So while we didn't discuss that much about male health, this is just a little reminder that it's not all on you women. And with that, I just want to remind you that the mocktail recipe that Sam spoke about, that Jackie created, that's linked down below. It's completely free. You can download that. And if some of this sparked your curiosity or your excitement and enthusiasm and drive to embark deeper on your health and well-being journey, our course is linked down below, and we would absolutely love it if you joined the community of women who are walking this path with us. And as you heard, we are really in it with you. We're in the arena. We're not standing in the pavilion. We're there. We're walking it with you. And our course, again, linked down below if you would like to do that. These discussions are going to continue. And I'm so grateful that I was joined here today by Jackie and Sam, and that we can share these things that we generally just discuss, the three of us. Whenever we chat, these are the kinds of things that we talk about and we share. So we've got a really nice spicy one that is lined up for our next discussion. Can't wait to get into that. It's going to be a little bit around, couple stuff and how people feel about that. And is it just emotional, relationship, and the physical aspects of it? So that's just a little bit of an insight into what we will be discussing next time. So if you want to see that, please remember to subscribe, turn on that notification bell, comment, and like to support these discussions, and also let us know, what else do you want us to discuss? Thank you so much, Jackie and Sam, for joining me on this discussion today. And thank you to all of you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.